Hey, Jen.
Hey, Dana. Hi, everyone.
Hi. We are lucky enough to be here today with Kevin Moran. He is a master hypnotist and coach certified with the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy and trained in conversational and sexual freedom hypnosis. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey Dana, hey Jennifer.
We're so glad you could join us today. We are so interested in hearing all things Kevin Moran. Tell us about the journey that led you here to becoming the amazing hypnotist you are.
I'd be glad to. So I've had an interest in hypnosis my entire life, and at one point attended a professional training in Toronto where I had a session with another attendee, which inspired me to become a hypnotherapist myself.
Nice. Very cool. Well, it sounds like you have a specialty, a few specialties. And so, of course, we want to hear about that. Tell us first about your emotional wellness coaching. What is that?
I'd be glad to talk to you about the emotional wellness coaching. Basically, the emotional wellness coaching is about working either with people who are coming in with multiple issues or they're working through a singular issue that requires a lot of extra time to work through. And I'll give you a couple of an example of each. I've worked with a client who was dealing with panic attacks from one trauma, guilt from another trauma, and the overwhelm of raising her grandkids. And something like that cannot be resolved in a session. So it requires some extra time to work with each issue one by one. Another example, I had a woman who came to me for a particular issue, but it became obvious right from the get go that the underlying issue was she was unhappy at home with her emotionally abusive and narcissistic husband. And when she first came to see me, and we did 6 sessions together, when she first came to see me, she was emotionally beaten down, was being gaslighted, tried to reason with him, which of course is a fool's errand. Can't really reason with a narcissist, and didn't really know what to do. She didn't know what to believe. So over the course of the 6 sessions, and unlike hypnotherapy sessions, which are generally a week apart, I put them 2 weeks apart, which gives them time to not only process the outcome of each session, but also to take action, because what it's all about is giving them confidence and empowerment to stand up for themselves, have emotional balance, and to make their own decisions. And by the time we met for the 6th session, after seeing progress after every session, she had moved out of the house into her own place and was in the process of filing for divorce. And the work we wound up doing in that final session was to help her overcome the fear of the pain she was going to have to go through in those divorce proceedings so that she could focus more on what her life would be like once she reached the other side.
Wow, that's pretty thorough. That sounds like somebody could come to you for one thing and end up kind of being treated for another thing. Is that part of your process, would you say?
That's right. As is often the case, the real problem, a person will come to me for a problem, and it's almost it's never that problem. There's always an underlying reason behind it.
Wow, excellent. And so, could you just describe, let's say I'm a client and I find your amazing website and I'm curious. Now what? What do I do?
Well, what would happen is that we would have a 15-minute consultation to discuss anything that you wanted to work with, to get an idea if we would work well together, and just to get an idea if we're a good fit for each other. And if we decide to move forward, we can begin the process of healing.
Excellent. And I heard you say earlier that that client, that was 6 sessions. So does that mean, um, do you have an average number of sessions, or does it vary? Is it what would I expect? So we have that 15-minute call.
Mhm,
Of course, I want to work with you.
mhm.
Now what?
The question of whether, and it comes in 6 sessions or 10 sessions, and it's really up to the client what they feel they need. 6 sessions is to focus on the issue, but if they feel like they would want to have a more extended guidance over time, it would be 10 sessions. So, for example, if we are meeting for 6 sessions, it would be over the period of maybe 3 to 4 months, depending on their schedule. But if they want to go on a 6 month journey with me as their coach, then 10 sessions is recommended.
Excellent. That's a great answer and helps me understand what a client might expect. And I think that leads us to discussing your niche. And Jennifer has several questions for you about that.
Yeah, so I understand your niche is sexual freedom.
Mhm.
What does sexual freedom mean? Could you give us a little bit more insight to that?
Sexual freedom hypnosis is actually a hybrid of sex therapy and hypnosis. It was taught to me by one of my mentors, Kaz Riley, who is a hypnotist, a sex therapist, and an author. And she is the creator of Sexual Freedom Hypnosis. I studied under her, and she covers all issues serving an underserved niche in people who are dealing with sexual issues. Often, many sexual issues are tied to shame and guilt and misinformation. So, because it's a combination of sex therapy and hypnosis, re educating our clients is half the battle. You would be amazed at how many sexual issues people have simply because of misinformation that we were given as kids growing up or even as adults.
So the area of sexual freedom is quite extensive. Could you give us an idea of some of the issues that you work with?
I can. Some of the issues that I work with, bedroom anxiety, because anxiety can be something that can really impact a bedroom experience between a couple. I also work with porn addiction, which has become a huge epidemic since the pandemic, for obvious reasons, people being shut in. There's not a whole lot to do. I also work with people who have been through sexual assault and abuse of all genders. As somebody who has gone through sexual trauma myself as an adult, I understand that it is something that affects both men and women. And it's important that these issues be discussed, even if they're not talked about or people are uncomfortable talking about it. These are conversations that we should be having.
Absolutely, because I would imagine it just penetrates all areas of your life when you have these issues.
Mhm.
So, Kevin, obviously, this is an area that people might feel particularly uncomfortable discussing their issues with. What can a person expect when they come to you?
Well, because as you said, it's an issue that people aren't necessarily comfortable talking about. The first of all, the discovery call is especially important, not only to establish that we would work well together, but also to put the person at ease to be comfortable with talking about what they want to talk about with me. And it's something that's handled with empathy, with gentleness, sympathy. It's very important that that person feels that they're in a safe environment to talk about these things.
Absolutely. So, Kevin, I noticed that you have one session as an option on your website.
That's right.
When would that apply? When would one session be enough? Or could you just explain that a little bit more for us?
I can. So, one session is typically for people who are dealing with mild anxiety, stress management, or just a simple phobia, since those can be gotten rid of as quickly as we got them in the first place. Otherwise, it's recommended to do 3 to 6 sessions, since that's usually what's required for most issues.
Excellent. Well, it's been so informative. Thank you so much for answering all these questions. But we have one question that we like to ask, and that is beyond hypnosis, what's something that lights you up?
Something that lights me up when I'm not doing hypnosis is doing Krav Maga. And for those who have not heard of it, it means contact combat. It is I guess you could say, a mixed martial art for self defense. It's Israeli, and it borrows from all different kinds of martial arts all over the world, but most heavily draws from boxing, wrestling, aikido, judo, and karate. And the origin story of that is actually quite interesting. It was created by a guy in what was formerly Czechoslovakia back in the 30s during the years leading up to World War II. He would gather up a bunch of Jewish wrestlers and boxers to go take to the streets to fight anti Semitic thugs, gangs basically roaming the streets late at night. But for all their athleticism, he quickly found out that boxing and wrestling was not really very practical in a street fight. So when he survived the war and emigrated to the newly formed state of Israel, he committed to coming up with a new martial art for real life situations. So he put together all of these different things to create something entirely new. And it's now considered a martial art that is perfect for real world situations.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Kevin, we are so grateful that you had time for us today to come and describe your emotional wellness coaching and your sexual freedom techniques and all of this value you're adding to people's lives. So we really appreciate hearing about Krav Maga. I didn't know that. Did you, Jen?
No, you learn
Yeah,
something every day.
that was fascinating. So it's wonderful to learn things about you. So we appreciate that. And with that, what do we always say?
Peace out.
Peace out.
Oh.